All right, hello everyone. I'd like to welcome all of you to today's Gopher Solutions webinar. My name is Jesse Stapp. I'm with Gopher Sport. And for those of you who are new to the webinar series, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background. This is a monthly webinar focusing on a variety of physical education subjects and topics. And past webinar topics have included PE teachers presenting on specific activities like assessment, fitness, classroom management, and PE advocacy. Some of the past presenters have included Dr. Robert Pangrazi, Dr. John Medina, and Jean Glazed, and the presenters have done a great job of bringing useful topics and information to the field of physical education. Our webinars will almost always occur the third week of the month, so please keep an eye peeled for future webinar opportunities. And all attendees of today's webinar will receive a certificate of participation for 1 hour of educational credit. So let's jump into the webinar topic. Today we're going to be covering active learning strategies for classrooms with Mr. Chad Trelay. And before I get into Chad's introduction, I wanted to mention that you as an attendee of the webinar will have the opportunity to ask questions throughout the presentation. And your questions are only visible to me, the moderator, so feel free to ask any questions you might have. Questions can be typed in the questions area on the right side of your screen at any time during the webinar. I'm going to accumulate those as we go throughout the presentation, and we'll have a chance to address your questions with Chad at the end of the presentation. So today I have the pleasure of introducing our presenter, Chad Trelay, who has been in various roles with the Chesapeake Public Schools in Chesapeake, Virginia. Chad most recently served as the Safe Routes to School coordinator for his school program. And actually, earlier in the week, Chad was appointed by his school board to be assistant principal at Sparrow Road Intermediate School in the same district. He has 18 years teaching experience as an elementary physical educator in the district. As a physical educator, he took great pride in offering a high-quality physical education program that focused on teaching the whole child. Chad utilized a variety of creative strategies and techniques to help students raise fitness levels and learn, practice critical movement skills and concepts that promote living an active lifestyle, along with the way he incorporated core academic content, character education, and team building concepts to help reinforce learning and build skills that students will need for a lifetime of success. Chad has also had many opportunities to present and share ideas throughout the state of Virginia and beyond. Hopefully you've gotten a chance to see Chad present. Over the past decade, he has presented in 27 states, as well as Canada and Spain on a variety of topics, including incorporating core standards of learning in PE, instant activities that get students up and moving, large group activities, and dance. Throughout the past 3 years, he has been presenting to classroom teachers on the connection between physical activity and learning and sharing active learning strategies for the classroom. He is a certified Bike Smart Virginia instructor and holds a master's in educational leadership. And on a more personal level, Chad has been happily married for 16 years to his amazing and supportive wife, Amy, and he is the father of 3 wonderful children, Bella, Alex, and Drew. So that's quite a lot. Chad, you've done quite a bit here. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm assuming you were anonymously voted by the school board, so Principal Chad, take it away here.
Thank you very much, Jesse. I appreciate the introduction. Good afternoon, webinar attendees. I'm really glad that you're taking a little bit of your personal time. I know the month of June is a tricky month. I'm sure that some of you are already out of school. Unlike me, I've got another couple of days before I get a little bit of a break before I start my new job on July 5th. So I'm really excited to share some active classroom strategies. I have been very fortunate over the past decade to learn from some of the experts in the field of physical education and beyond about the many benefits of physical activity on student learning. I first learned about this concept when Gene Glazed came to my school division well over a decade ago. Soon after, I began searching for articles that supported the need for increasing student physical activity levels and the connection to learning. Things changed immediately after reading the book Spark, The Revolutionary New Science of Exercise in the Brain by Dr. John Ratey. I then began to focus a more focused effort to learn about this positive connection. I have reviewed the work by Dr. Eric Jensen, Dr. Charles Hillman, Mike Zala, and Dr. John Medina. I have also participated in workshops with Dr. Marcia Tate, Dr. Sarah Armstrong, and Dr. John Almarode, and have picked up some amazing information that I have compiled into this webinar. As a practitioner, I started using the Action-Based Learning Lab at my school, created an active remediation program, and began offering the staff development course that Jesse mentioned in my introduction that focuses on the active classroom strategies for classroom teachers. This webinar is a snapshot of the 6-hour hands-on course that I developed for our classroom teachers. Throughout the presentation, I will share important research-based support for using an active classroom model, but we'll also share some hands-on activities that you can do with kids or teach classroom teachers to do with their students. I also want to mention that this subject has been covered in previous webinars. Kim Bevel did Boost Student Learning with Classroom Activity on March 31st, 2015. And Gene Glazed did Common Core Standards through Physical Education on January 20th of 2014. So you can go back into the archive webinars and get some more information. Their presentations focus mostly on the research-based strategy, the research on why this is really important. I'm going to get into more of the hands-on as we go through the presentation. When we look at learning and we talk to classroom teachers, sometimes we get lost in what's really more important. I hear a lot in my school district about the importance of instructional time, but I have a problem with that. I'm going to read to you a quick quote that I found from Classroom Assessment Techniques. Learning can and often does take place without the benefit of teaching, and sometimes even in spite of it. But there is no such thing as effective teaching in the absence of learning. Teaching without learning is just talking. And that's what we want to try to help our teachers avoid. And what we know about physical activity is that it really does have a positive impact on how students learn. So take a look at these little bullets that I have for you. You probably have seen this information, but this is great information to share with classroom teachers. When we talk about helping students learn, attention is kind of important. Brain-derived neurotrophic factor, also known as BDNF, has been called miracle grow for the brain, and it helps the brain grow connections and pathways that will help students learn and remember and create pathways that they will be able to recall important information later on. Using movement, using movement, music, art, and hands-on learning opportunities provide students with the chance to get engaged in their learning. We want to increase interaction because the brain really likes the interaction. So doing physical activities provides the brain the stimulation it really likes. The other thing is that research clearly shows that you want to do exercise before you learn because it balances all the chemicals in your brain. We have endorphins and many other chemicals that are in the brain, and after exercise, it puts the brain in more of a homeostatic state that it's better prepared to learn, so it's really important. And the last one really hits home for our classroom teachers. When we talk about executive function, we're talking about concentration, impulse control, foresight, and problem solving. Are those things critical for our learners? And of course, the answer is yes. This next slide is one of my favorites of all time. It's compliments of Dr. Charles Hillman at the University of Illinois, and I think that the slide kind of speaks for itself. Which brain do you think your classroom teachers want in there. You want the one that's firing on the right. So we know that physical activity is great, and we know what the research says, so what do we do with this information? That's the key thing. How do we take what the research says and turn it into actual practice? So using some of the 6 Purposes of Movement comes from the book, The Kinesthetic Classroom, and I've started to use this book as sort of my way to help teachers process the information, and it does a great job of providing different activities for all of these things. And I'm going to share some that may be in the book, but I'll also share some others as we go through and look at all of these 6 reasons for having movement in the classroom. We're going to start with prepping the brain. And this slide here is from a workshop that I went to with Dr. John Almerode, who's at James Madison University. And when I saw this slide, it really made me think, wow, look at these direct correlations with certain movement, motor skills, how they impact and how they match up really nicely with academic skills. You know, when we want to sell physical activity to teachers, if we can't make them understand the connection, the direct link, then we're missing the boat. So this slide right here is very very telling and provides us with some great information. So we're going to go ahead and start with some simple cross-lateral activities. Now, unfortunately, I can't show any videos because of the different computer bandwidths. So what we're going to do is I'm going to kind of talk you through some of them, and I also have some good pictures to show you. So one of the first ones that I was ever introduced to was from Brain Gym. We're going to do an opposite elbow to opposite knee cross crawl. So you bring your opposite knee up, touch the elbow, and then you switch into the other side. So that's a traditional cross crawl. If you teach the elementary level, you've probably heard of what a cross crawl is. Sometimes our middle school and high school folks aren't familiar with the term, but have done this sort of an activity with students. There are lots of other ways to do it. You can just do a simple hand to the opposite knee. You could also do opposite hand to opposite elbow. So anything that's crossing that midline is going to prep the brain for learning. And if you looked at the slide before, I'll go back real quick, you'll notice that cross-lateral activities connect really well to language, written and oral. So when we're getting ready to do an activity for language arts, might be a great time to do some cross crawls. Another activity that's really great to do, and I love to do this with music with students, and it's a quick break. Again, we're just doing these, you can do them for longer, but a 1 to 2 minute break will have a huge positive benefit on the students' ability to learn and process information. We do what's called a walkabout. We put on music, and then as they're walking around the classroom, they have to do different cross-lateral challenges. So they would maybe start with opposite hand to opposite knee, opposite hand to opposite shoulder, and then you change it up as they go. You can make it more difficult. Opposite elbow to opposite knee obviously is going to be a little bit more challenging. We also do what's called a toy soldier, which is a opposite hand to opposite foot out in front of you, like you're walking like a toy soldier, or the Russian march, if you've ever seen some footage of the Russian soldiers marching. And then after you know, a couple of minutes and a couple of switches with the cross laterals, the students go and sit down and they get right back to work. So that's a pretty simple one. The next one that you'll see is called the Body Cross Challenge. I actually got this activity from Chip Candy, a former National Middle School PE Teacher of the Year, and he calls this the X-Man. But for this one, there are 5 layers. You start at the very top of the body and you work your way down. So you're going to start with one hand and you're going to start on the opposite ear. So you would take your right hand and go to the left ear, and then left hand to right ear. And then you go to shoulder, hip to hip, knee to knee, and toe to toe, working down your body. So it's pretty simple, and I'll show you a picture of my middle child. This is Alex, my son, who is kind of demonstrating how it looks. So if you start at number 1 and work your way across to number 5, you can see him going down the body doing the different activities for the cross-body challenge. Now, this one is a real favorite one at the school level. The kids that I do this with, I mean, they love to do the cross-body challenge. They have a lot of fun with it. And then we get into a little bit more action, as you'll see here in a second, as my son, Alex, demonstrates some adaptations to add a little bit of fitness. One of the other challenges that you can do here is see how long it takes them to do the cycle 3 times. So they go through it really quickly. Again, great way to get the energy out, do some cross-lateralization and support learning, and just get out of that chair so they can reset that brain. So the adaptations for this are to put yourself into a plank position and then do the exact same pattern. So you start in a plank position with one hand on the ground, you reach the other hand, touch the opposite ear, put that hand down, and then bring the other hand up. And then you go shoulder to shoulder, hip to hip, knee to knee, and then the most challenging part is toe to toe. You can also do the crab plank. As you can see, Alex is pretty good at balancing on 3 body parts and is able to do the cross-lateral as well. So not only is he doing the cross-lateralization, but he's also adding a little bit of fitness, my favorite. The next thing that we talked about in the beginning of the 6 reasons for movement is to do brain boosters or energizers. We want to energize the brain. We want to increase blood flow. So here are some simple ones. You may have done these before. The finger and thumb challenge is also a really popular one. You can do this with students in a desk. I always love to do this one during assemblies. I'd have a mass of 200 kids. I could get them all quiet and focused on a little finger-thumb challenge. So they put their index finger out and the thumb up, and then when the teacher or the facilitator, it could be a student, says switch, they're just going to switch what the hand is doing. So the right hand would then turn into the thumb and the left hand would turn into the finger, and then you just switch it back and forth. Now, it's really important to remember that if your thumb is up and your index finger is out, that's not good. If you have 2 index fingers pointing forward, that's not good either. And if you have 2 thumbs up, you're the Fonz, but that's still not good enough. All right, so let's try that real quick. You can play with me if you'd like. Some of you may have mastered this one. Go ahead and put that index finger out and thumb up. And 1, 2, 3. Oh, yeah, if you switched already, you shouldn't have because I didn't say the word. Switch. Go ahead and switch. Awesome. How you feel? Pretty good. It's a great cross-lateral activity. Switch. And switch again. All right, nice job. Good practice. So we'll move on to the next cool Energizer activity. This one, the first time I ever saw this one was Jean Glazed. She introduced us to Gotcha, and every time I do this with teachers or students, it's always they get a great belly laugh, which, again, the brain loves a little bit of humor, a little bit of laughter. So basically, you have 2 jobs here. We do this typically either with a partner, or you can do it in a large group with a circle. But you're going to place one palm up, and your partner will place the same palm up facing you, so it'll be on the opposite side, and you place your index finger in their palm, and they place their index finger in your palm, and then again, the facilitator says the word gotcha, and you try to capture your partner's index finger while getting your index finger to escape from their palm. It's really important that when you're doing this activity, that there is no cuppage of the hand. The hand has to be perfectly flat. You cannot make it into a little bit of cup and get close to that index finger. So it has to be all the way out. Again, after they practice this one a few times, they switch which hand is palm up, and it's a lot of fun for the kids. Great activity. Again, great belly laughter and a quick energizer that you can do with your students. Now, some of these are some more recent finds. I've been able to find some great video online, and this one is one of my favorites. We got to do this year as we were getting ready to take our standardized testing. I happened to be a proctor, and I got to do this with some of the kids, and they really enjoy doing this. It's called finger fitness. You start with all of your fingers touching, thumb included, at the tips. And you want to open them up real wide. And you may remember twiddling your thumbs when you were a kid. We're going to twiddle your thumbs. And you can see the middle picture. This is my youngest son, Andrew. He's twiddling his thumbs. So his 4 fingers are still attached while he twiddles his thumb in a forward direction, or you can go backwards. All right, and that seems pretty easy because you have this cool thing called an opposable thumb, and it works pretty independently of the fingers. But when you start talking about your fingers, things are going to get a little more interesting. So go ahead and put all of those fingers and thumb tips back together and get those hands spread out, kind of like you're holding a ball, a big ball. And this time you're going to take your index fingers and put them apart, and you're going to try to rotate them around each other. That is a little bit more challenging, you may notice, and you can see the picture, the bottom picture on the right, that's Andrew doing the index fingers with the other fingers are connected and the thumb is connected. And you can go in the opposite direction. Now, if you really want to challenge yourself, try doing your middle finger. Remember, forward and backwards is always a good challenge. And then try your ring finger. Now, that is the ultimate challenge. The ring finger for me just does not want to work. And the reason that that happens is you have a tendon that your pinky, ring finger, and middle finger all share the same tendon, which is why they don't work as well independently. And it's a great challenge for kids and something that's easy that they can do at their desk to just kind of give them a little bit of a chance to re-energize that brain to get the blood flowing, and again, to do that cross-lateral, which is really great for reading skills. The last one I'm going to talk about is what's called the finger walk. You guys remember the itsy bitsy spider? That's basically what a finger walk is. You're going to put your index finger on your thumb, and you're going to do both of them to kind of make a little rectangle, and then you're going to rotate one finger and thumb and switch it so that the finger comes up on the other side. You can see this is Andrew again, and he's rotated his hands around so that he just slides it up. Now, that's really easy, and you can do that part really fast. You get really good at it because that's what you did when you were a kid doing the itsy bitsy spider. But then I want you to try to, as you rotate the hand up, instead of connecting to the index finger, try it connecting to the middle finger. And then as you rotate up again, try to do it to the other middle finger, and then your ring finger, and then your ring finger, and then your pinky, and then your pinky. That is really challenging. And then you can work your way back down the list from ring finger to middle, and then index to index. Big challenge. Start with the itsy bitsy spider version, and then work your way up and challenge your kids. Really good brain booster for those little guys, and even the older ones like this one. So what we're trying to avoid is this look right here. It's known as the gall, the glazed over look. How many of you have seen that in classrooms? If you walk by one, you probably will see this. And part of the reason that we have this is that we've lost the attention of our students. And what we're trying to do as teachers is we're trying to avoid this, and one of the ways to do that is to do a physical activity to reset the brain, get the brain engaged, and then students can learn. I like to equate what's happening in this look to a glass of water. The glass of water is full of water at this point. So this guy, he is full of water, and we're trying to pour more water into that cup. And so right now, all the teacher is doing, the teacher's no longer teaching, the teacher is just talking because this person is not paying any attention to what's going on. So we've got to reset the brain. And there are lots of strategies to reset the brain. It's also known as change of state, and that concept of change of state comes from Dr. Sarah Armstrong, and I'll talk a little bit more about the change of state later on in the presentation. So getting fit is another reason to get kids moving and have movement in the classroom. We know that there are many reasons to encourage classroom teachers to integrate fitness activities in the classroom. We know that the CDC recommends that children get 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity each day, so any chunk or bit of fitness that they can get in the classroom is to the good, and it doesn't have to be consecutive 60 minutes. It can be broken up all day long. Research clearly shows a link between fitness levels and the performance on standardized testing. Every time they do the study, the kids who are more fit perform better. After exercise, your ability to sort out priorities improves, allowing you to block out distractions and better concentrate on the task at hand. So it reduces that impulse, the impulsive behavior that students have, and that's kind of a big winner for our classroom teachers. The other thing, too, is that we know that healthier students miss less school, so providing them ways to get physically active is really important. And if you think about it, if you get kids more active and get them more fit, they're going to have increased blood flow. So as they have more blood flow, what do you think is going to be happening to that brain? Yeah, it's going to be getting all that cool extra oxygen that it needs in order to function properly. So there are lots of ways to do fitness activities. The first one is one of my favorite websites. It's called the JAM School Program. It's a free website. You can go and check it out. The JAMmin Minute has lots of exercise routines. This is just one sample, and it also includes activity videos that teachers can use to get students moving. So if the teacher doesn't want to lead it or put something up there, they can put it up on their whiteboard or their Promethean board or whatever they have, a TV, and have the kids do the activities. I will caution you, one of the things that I try to avoid with my students is giving them a designated number of reps. And the reason for that is that we need to differentiate based on ability level. And if we're doing 10 push-up plank shoulder taps, I might have one student who can do it in 5 seconds. I might have another student that it will take them 30 seconds. So it's not fair to do it for a certain amount of reps. I would rather see a teacher use 20 to 30 seconds of time before they switch as they go along. So just keep that in mind as you use the JAMmin Minute. You can always alter these their exercise lists to make it a little bit more kid-friendly, in my opinion. Next is my mind was blown at the 2013 National Convention, and I got a chance to see Pete Driscoll do a Tabata session for kids, and it really made me appreciate the use of this exercise protocol. Basically, it's a 4-minute exercise interval that is research-based and that can have a big impact on fitness levels if done properly. For classroom purposes, just having an organized interval that students can perform could make all the difference in the world. Each work cycle can be changed to keep the activity interesting. If you are worried about the amount of activity and the intensity while working for the 20 seconds, my suggestion is that classroom teachers can integrate vocabulary or flashcards. So, for example, we might do jumping jacks for the first interval of 20 seconds, and then they rest. And the second interval, they do math flashcards. The third interval, they do cross crawls. You could either do that and alternate between academics and fitness, or you could just do all fitness. Again, it's only 4 minutes long. It gives the kids a chance to get up out of their desk. It gets the blood flowing, all the things that we know that the brain needs in order to be at maximum capacity. And my last one, Jesse alluded to dancing. I'm a big dance fan. Dancing is awesome because it reinforces math concepts because of the patterning. It's a great way to get that fitness in. It's great for cardio. It's great for student creativity. They get a chance to kind of add their own flair to some of the dances. If you've ever been on YouTube, there are tons of dance videos out there. You can actually go to the Just Dance website and put up the video of the characters dancing, and the kids can just copy that. Or you can also search for me, Chad Triole, and I do a bunch of videos as well. And then the important thing is that you want to encourage the students to get involved. Some kids, depending on the culture of the school and the culture of the building, have a hard time and are nervous about dancing in front of others. I can tell you that if you have ever tried to do dance, sometimes it's hard in the beginning, but as students get more comfortable and have fun with it, they really get into it. It's really popular right now because of shows like Dancing with the Stars, and So You Think You Can Dance. They're on primetime TV. Kids are watching it. So dance is a winner. It's cross-lateral. It's patterns. It's everything that you want to do, and it also includes fitness. I'm going to let this one sink in for a few seconds. When I saw this quote, it made me stop and think, wow, we're doing this to ourselves. We're doing this to our kids. We know what the statistics say about the lack of physical activity and what it does to the body. Sitting is the new smoking is a scary concept, and we need to be coming up with a solution to the obesity epidemic, and the solution to the obesity epidemic is the physical activity that we do as physical education teachers, but also encouraging classroom teachers to integrate it as part of what they do as well. So team building is another great tool that enhances classroom management. Creating a classroom culture that fosters the basic tenets of team building is a great way to meet 21st century learning objectives: communication, collaboration, problem solving, decision making. Team building does all of these things. They're great to do in the beginning of the school year. This is a great thing to share as an in-service as you get your faculty back together and show them some of the activities that they can do in the classroom to start building some team cohesion, because it really does help with team classroom management. One of my favorite ones to do that can include there are multiple layers for it is basic rock, paper, scissors. I'm sure that you all have, many of you have already integrated rock, paper, scissors. There's traditional rock, paper, scissors where two students play. You play until you have a winner, and then they rotate, and they get new partners. One of the things that we want to foster when we're doing team building activities is opportunities for students to interact with one another. If we just play one person against one person and they are only the two that ever play against each other, we're not building that social concept that we need, that we really want to encourage with team building, so the kids get to know each other. You know, you can also do the social piece where they have to introduce themselves or tell something about them or something that they did for the weekend. Another version is playing with your feet. When you play with your feet, you're going to jump for these or bounce, and on the fourth bounce, you show your symbol. If you keep your feet together, that's rock. If you put your feet out wide in the straddle position, that is paper. And then if you either cross your ankles or you put one foot out in front and one foot back, that would be scissors. I've seen it played both ways. You can also add math to this, so you can add some academics by playing for points. So every time you play, you get 2 points, and so we're working on our two multiplication tables, etc. And then my last one is my favorite one to do. It's a great way to line kids up, is to do a game called Entourage. So basically everybody plays, and if you don't win, you now become that person's entourage, and you cheer for them. So as that person plays, if they win, the people who were on the other team now come for you, and you play until you have the ultimate champion, who is your line leader. Artist in the Canvas is one that I did to help integrate basic vocabulary and math concepts. It was a movement activity. Basically, you get two partners. One partner is the canvas, who stands in front with their back to the partner behind, and the partner behind is the artist, who draws on the person's back, which is their canvas. And the artist gets to draw, depending on what you're doing, numbers or letters or shapes, and the person who is the canvas has to then go identify by touching it in the classroom, touch something that matches that shape or looks like that shape or the letter, or etc. You can also do vocabulary that way, where students spell out vocabulary words. It's a great cooperative activity, and the kids have a lot of fun doing that. Most of you have probably already done human knots. The funny thing about it is you will be surprised how many classroom teachers have never done it with a group of kids, because they don't understand the concept or how to have students get a partner or get into the groups to make it, and then kind of walk them through how to do it properly. So human knots is a great thing to do with the faculty in the beginning of the school year. And the last one is called, I call it crazy card patterns. I can't remember, I got it from J.D. Hughes. You got to love J.D. Hughes. If you haven't gotten any of his books, you're missing out. But J.D. Hughes does this activity, and again, I can't remember what he calls it. I call it crazy card patterns. But basically, you use playing cards. I love playing cards because they're cheap. And the students work in pairs to try to create the patterns that they have at each level. So you would try to collect one red card that is higher than 8, one red card that's lower than 8, and each time you go to pick up the cards, you can pick up one for each hand, but you have to pick them up from cards that are facing down. If you pick them up, you have to take them. If you don't need them, your partner will take them back, put them face down, and pick up 2 different cards until you create the entire pattern of 8 cards. And then you can do different patterns, and it's a lot of fun. Kids really get into it, and it's a pretty simple activity that once you're introduced it, they can do it all the time, and they'll ask for it all the time, because it's an awesome one. So again, this is pretty simple. This is basic physiology, human physiology. We know that when the body has been sitting inactive for about 20 minutes, what happens is the brain says, I'm sitting, I'm done. So when we talk about sit and get for teachers, it actually equals sit and sleep for many of the kids. Sometimes we focus so much on they focus so much on instruction that they forget about learning. There's a big difference between the two. You could be the best teacher in the world, but if nobody learned anything, you didn't really teach anything, and maybe you aren't the best teacher. So you might want to keep that in mind and help your teachers understand that learning is what's important, and we've got to make sure that the brain is awake in order for that to happen. Reinforcing content, here are a group of activities. I'm going to go ahead and give you some slides so you can kind of see what they're all about. The first one that I'm going to talk about is slide and count. This is from Glazed. Basically, you start with two partners facing one another with both palms up. You reach across, so it's a cross lateral. You place your hand on your partner's palm, and then you can do vocabulary words, and in this case, we're going to count, and we're going to do the 2 multiplication tables. So as one person reaches across, they go 2, then they go the other hand 4, and then the partner gets to go cross lateral 6, 8, and you keep going until you set the benchmark. Say let's stop at the 10th multiple, so you would stop at the number 20 for the 2s. If you were doing 3s, you would stop at 30, etc., etc., etc. This is a great one, again, to prep the brain, reinforcing content, getting them ready to do a math activity. Rock, paper, scissors math, the same thing as a regular rock, paper, scissors. You're going to touch your palm on your fist on your palm 3 times, and on the 4th beat, you show the number of fingers this time. You'll notice that I had my 2 boys demonstrate it with the palms down so that you could see the fingers. If you have their hands sideways, sometimes it's hard to see how many fingers you have out, and that's not fair. So I always make my students do it with palm down when they show. And then for this one, depending on the age group, you could do addition or you could do multiplication. So 2 plus 3 is 5. The person who says it gets the point, and then you try it again. I like to do this one where they play, and as soon as they play, they run back to like an end line, or they have to go around the room and touch 3 chairs, and then they come back together, and then they play again. So we add a little bit more movement so they're not standing around so much while they do it. If you want to get really complicated, you can also do it with 2 hands, and you can mix the numbers. So I might put out 3 fingers on one hand and 2 fingers on the other hand to make 5, and then they have to multiply 5 times whatever the other partner puts out. Just remember that if you're ever doing multiples, don't let anybody put out a 1, and don't let anybody put out a 0, because you're going to get a pretty easy answer there. The playing card challenge has a couple of different layers. Classroom teachers really like using the playing cards because you can set the activities on the side. So I kind of have it set up on here on the slide like I would have it in a classroom. So each wall has one of the suits up, and it also has an activity that the students can do. As they pick the card up in the middle, they go out to the matching suit, and then they do the number on the card of that activity. So if I have the 8 of hearts, I'm going to do 8 jumping jacks. And then I'm going to keep the card. This is really important. So you have to have lots of cards for this. But you're going to keep the card because we're going to use it for a math activity, the cards that you have for a math activity. So you're going to keep going, and you go back and you get a new card, and then you may end up at crab kicks. And again, if it's an ace, it's always 11. It's never 1. A lot of times I take out the low cards, and I don't tell the kids, but I take out the low numbers. And face cards are always worth 10. If you want to, you can also add jokers, and then the jokers can be any suit that you might need later. So it's like a bonus card that you get in your pack for when you're creating the math challenges later on. For this one, again, at the end, you get the students into small groups of like 4 or 5, and then they get different math challenges that they have to try to complete. You could have them demonstrate an A-B pattern. Or an AABB pattern, so they're doing simple math. They can make math sentences using the cards. So 2 plus 3 equals 5. So they use the cards that they have in their hand to create math problems, or equality, so that they have 20, which is 2 face-up cards, and it's an 8 and a 10 and a 10 to make 20 on each side of the equation. So if you ever do this with classroom teachers, they're going to come up with a whole bunch of different ways to use the math, and it'll blow your mind. But they really like this one. And then this idea actually comes from Chip Candy again. He did it with vocabulary, but I've done it with both. Vocabulary for spelling, or for just general vocabulary that the classroom teachers needed for maybe like science or social studies. Or I've also done math flashcards. Each student gets a partner. They move around the room. One partner will go in, pick up the flashcard, and then go out and meet their partner and walk next to them while they give them the equation, and then the partner who was walking and didn't get the card will have to give the answer. They get 3 attempts to try to get the answer right. If it's not right after 3, the partner tells them. They hand the card to that person takes that card in, changes it out, and then they come back with a new card for their partner, and they find them in the room, and they keep walking together. It's really important here that you make sure that the students are keeping up with each other, that there's nobody running out of control, that there's a conscious effort to try to help their partner find each other so they can complete as many cards as they can. Usually if you give them the incentive of points for how many cards that they complete, that usually keeps them together and they do a better job of working together. So how much time do you have? Well, the news on this is not necessarily good. If you work with kindergartners, you know that your focused learning potential is very small. So you have to keep the kids engaged. You have to do some sort of activity to keep that brain engaged. Now, we know that certain things will help them stay engaged longer. The more cardio that you do prior to an activity will keep the attention levels because the blood will continue to flow for a longer period of time after the activity. But in general terms, it's age plus or minus 2 minutes. So you don't have a lot of time. So it's really important to realize that teachers need to understand that they need to chunk their lessons. It needs to be a little bit of lecture, and then they've got to give kids a chance to process. The other part of this is that the memory system works a specific way. If we overload the memory system with too much information without giving the kids the time to process that information, they're going to throw something out because they only have so much space in the brain to remember certain things without having a chance to process it. So chunking gives them that chance, which leads us into this next slide, and that is the brain-based learning strategy. So these are specific learning strategies that teachers can use and implement. They're not all physical activity related. Now, physical activity we know has a huge impact on this, but there are also some general learning strategies that they can apply to help students process the information. So you can take a look at these. These are from Dr. Sarah Armstrong. As I mentioned, movement is not the only brain-compatible way to engage students in learning. Teachers need to understand what they need to understand is how they can use this change of state concept to keep students engaged throughout the lesson. Most teachers use these strategies but fail to realize the impact on student learning, and because they don't use them sequentially to help students process information. Failure to allow students to process the information that's being learned greatly diminishes the chance that the students are going to be able to recall that information later. So they might have it in short-term memory, and they may be able to recall it for a test, but when they need it for the standardized test in 3 months, they're not going to remember it unless we reinforce it. So you've got to give them a chance to process. So by taking a note, drawing a picture, sharing with another student what that means to them, using hand gestures, all of those things up there can help students remember the information for a longer period of time. And I'm going to finish real quickly here with using technology. There are some awesome tools out there, and if you have not seen them or used them, you may not have because you're the physical education teacher, and you're already doing some of these types of things in your classroom. But these are great things to introduce to your classroom teachers. They're free websites. You may not have all of the content available to you, but you still will have content that the teachers can use. They're all excellent, great resource, and I highly suggest that you take advantage of these. Check them out yourself. Brain Breaks by Hop Sports. I just got turned on to this one. It is really impressive with the content that is available, not only the brain break part, but it's also really good health and wellness content that you can show kids. So check that cool stuff out, and I think you'll be really impressed. And I want to finish with my last slide just so you have. These are some great resources. These are what I use when I talk about the research. I've gotten tons of good research and great resources and activities from these. The other thing is, in doing this with the classroom teachers, they have provided me with so many amazing ideas, creative ways to integrate this, and they really, once they see it and they start using it, they really get empowered, and it's really making a big difference to the teachers that are using it in my school district, and I've really enjoyed doing it, which is kind of why I wanted to share it with you today. So I'm going to give it back over to Jesse so that we can hit some questions.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Chad. Those are some really, really cool, easy, and effective, not time-consuming. I think that's a lot of good, applicable content that we can take back with us to our schools. So with the exception of the finger and thumb challenge, I don't think that's possible. That was a tough one for me. But really some cool things in here, and I think it's important to note that these brain breaks don't always have to be physical activity. There were some cool learning strategies right at the end there. I think that's where some of the classroom teachers shy away from this stuff, and I think that's where a lot of the questions are turning is, what are one or two things, Chad, in your experience as physical educators that we can do to get some of the school staff on board with us, whether that's the classroom teachers, the principals, the students, especially now that we've got some time now between the next school year? What are a couple easy things that we can be doing this summer?
Well, do your homework. You know, a lot of our administrators, interestingly enough, read books over the summer that have to do with educational content. Give them the suggestion of trying out John Medina's book, or Spark the Revolutionary New Science of Exercise in the Brain, or even I'm really a big fan of Mike Zala's book, I can't think of where it is right now. Hold on. It's in here. Active Classroom. No, the Kinesthetic Classroom. That book is awesome. It's designed for teachers. It lays everything out. It has all the research in it. But challenge your administrators to take a look at this, because that might open their eyes to the many possibilities. You know, as educators, we get caught up in, you know, are we going to make this, are we going to be able to pass the standardized tests? And my argument to the teachers is, if you've never tried this, you don't know the power of what doing physical activity or engaging some of these brain-compatible strategies will have for your students. You won't have to reteach them. You know, if you use the strategies correctly and reinforce concepts and then bring it back and keep using it over time so that they get it into long-term memory, and then use different modalities. You know, it doesn't have to be, you know, you can have a student teach another student. You can have, you know, if you're doing the order of planets, the students can actually get a planet and then they have to stand in the right order. And then they have to do not only the order of the planets from the sun, but they can also do the size of the planets. They have to know that in the state of Virginia. So it's great to do those physical activities. And then if you can give them little tiny snippets, you know, get your administrator to buy in a little bit and do some of these brain break ideas during a faculty meeting. That was one of the ways that I hooked my principal, is that I could get everybody calmed down for the faculty meeting by doing some of these little silly finger and thumb challenges, and they would all laugh and have a good time, and then they would settle down, and then we would have a great meeting. So again, do the research, share the research, and be proactive. You know, if you notice that some teachers are struggling or need a tip, just give them a tip that they might be able to use. You know who you can approach and who you can approach. But when you see a teacher, when another teacher sees a teacher using something effectively that is research-based and it's working for their kids, guess what's going to happen? They're going to get hooked.
Yeah, really great advice there. I think that was another question had alluded to this as well. When is a good way, when or where is a good way to approach colleagues on the subject of possibly doing some of this stuff in their classrooms? Is it, you mentioned the faculty meetings, is it lunch breaks? Is there a good time to address some of your colleagues on some of these activities they could be doing?
I think number one, I think faculty meetings are very powerful because, number one, you typically have everybody in your building at the same time there, and you might have what we would call a captive audience. You may have a couple of friends who are in your school who are your quote-unquote champions / guinea pigs, who you introduce them to an activity, or you say, hey, you know what, would you mind if I came by your class today to do an Energizer with your kids, you know, maybe between your social studies lesson and your math lesson? And just so, one of the challenges and one of the things that teachers are most afraid of, and I get this question all the time from classroom teachers, is they're going to get out of control. Well, the research says the exact opposite of that. If you have good quality classroom management and you use these techniques, kids actually calm down after using them. I've actually seen the benefit of that when I've used these with kids in classrooms. So it's about how you manage. You know, if the classroom teacher's worried about the management, then they probably already have a management problem. It's not going to, the movement's not going to make the difference. But for those kids that need a break, and you can see them, they're stimming, they're moving, they're fidgeting, they're biting on their pencils. They're looking for a way to move because their brain's trying to regulate that chemistry inside so that it works, the brain works properly. So again, find a champion, find a friend, use your faculty meetings, and really work your administrators.
Awesome. And that was another question that had come in was, do you have any management tips for classroom teachers to get the students re-engaged? And you hit on that one already. That's great. You're right. It's not the movement that's causing some of those management issues. So I appreciate that. And I want to just thank everybody again. We don't have any more questions at this point. Feel free to email us if you have any questions that come up after this. But we just want to thank everybody for attending today's webinar, and just as a reminder to keep an eye peeled for the continuing education certificate that you'll receive for the hour today from joining us. So keep an eye peeled for future webinar invites, and everybody have a great day. Appreciate you attending.
Thanks, everybody.